We can see that again in the Middle East today. So I call again for restraint and de-escalation at the border between Lebanon and Israel.
We're also working to bring greater measure of peace and stability to the Middle East. The world must not flinch from the horrors of October 7th.
So the US-backed terrorists from the occupied land of Palestine, also known as Israel, have slaughtered more than 500 innocent people in Lebanon. They murdered more than 50 children alone in just one day. And there was no Hamas hiding nonsense here. Killing innocent people for fun is a key hallmark of Israeli terrorists and their Western backers. Such has been the barbarity of Israeli terrorists that hospitals are now struggling to deal with those murdered and injured in Lebanon. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, at least 1,835 Lebanese people were wounded in the attacks. Joe Biden, the robotic president of a country which remains the biggest sponsor of crimes against humanity, spoke at the United Nations General Assembly today. But as expected, he simply chose not to condemn Israel for its war crimes in Lebanon. I mean, how can you expect him to condemn a crime that he has so passionately sponsored?
We're also working to bring greater measure of peace and stability to the Middle East. The world must not flinch from the horrors of October 7th. Any country would have the right and responsibility to ensure that such an attack can never happen again. Thousands of armed Hamas terrorists invaded a sovereign state, slaughtering and massacring more than 1,200 people, including 46 Americans, in their homes and at a music festival. Despicable acts of sexual violence, 250 innocents taken hostage. I've met with the families of those hostages. I've grieved with them. They're going through hell. Innocent civilians in Gaza are also going through hell. Thousands and thousands killed, including aid workers. Too many families dislocated, crowding into tents, facing a dire humanitarian situation. They did not ask for this war that Hamas started. I put forward with Qatar and Egypt a ceasefire and hostage deal. It's been endorsed by the UN Security Council. Now is the time for the parties to finalize its terms, bring the hostages home, and secure security for Israel and Gaza free of Hamas' grip, ease the suffering in Gaza, and end this war. On October 7th, since October 7th, we've also been determined to prevent a wider war that engulfs the entire region. Hezbollah, unprovoked, joined the October 7th attack, launching rockets into Israel. Almost a year later, too many on each side of the Israeli-Lebanon border remain displaced. A full-scale war is not in anyone's interest. Even as the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible. In fact, it remains the only path to lasting security to allow the residents from both countries to return to their homes and the border safely. And that's what we're working tirelessly to achieve. As we look ahead, we must also address the rise of violence against innocent Palestinians on the West Bank and set the conditions for a better future, including a two-state solution where Israel enjoys security and peace and full recognition and normalized relations with all its neighbors, where Palestinians live in security, dignity, and self-determination in a state of their own. Progress toward peace will put us in a stronger position to deal with the ongoing threat posed by Iran. Together we must deny oxygen to its terrorist proxies, which have called for more October 7th and ensure that Iran will never, ever obtain a nuclear weapon.
Biden's poodle, Keir Starmer, too, did the ticking the box exercise back home here in England when he spoke at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, just before leaving for the US to attend the special session of the United Nations General Assembly. Once again, he too chose not to condemn Israel for its latest episode of war crimes. And this guy has been a career human rights lawyer before becoming a politician.
We can see that again in the Middle East today. So I call again for restraint and de-escalation at the border between Lebanon and Israel. Again, all parties to pull back from the brink. I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages, and a recommitment to the two-state solution. A recognised Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel. And that's the message I will take to the UN General Assembly when I travel there later today.
The extent of the horror caused by the Israeli terrorists can be gauged by how Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reacted to the event. Whilst in the UN, even he called the killing of women and children by Israel as extraordinarily concerning. This is the shock expressed by a person who has been a huge cheerleader of Israel.
Top of mind for me this morning is what's happening in Lebanon. I spoke with a number of Lebanese Canadians this morning who are very much worried for their families, their communities. I had a long conversation with the King of Jordan this morning. I spoke with Secretary General Guterres, including about this over the past days. We need to make sure that civilians are protected. The violence needs to stop. The women, the children killed in Lebanon is extraordinarily concerning.
But for the BBC, Israel is targeting Hezbollah fighters. The world's most reputed, or at least once reputed, media brand did not think it fit to at least attribute this claim to Israeli terrorists. Because for them, the need to attribute only arises when Israelis need defending for its war crimes. Such as Hamas-run health ministry says Israeli war crimes have killed so many people or massacred so many people. There you have to attribute everything to Hamas-run health ministry, just to make light of Israeli war crimes.
These were some of the most intense airstrikes, if not the most intense airstrikes carried out by Israel, targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon.
And how does BBC's Middle East representative Yolan Nell report this on BBC One's breakfast program? She gives a spectacular Hamas twist to almost justify the Israeli carnage. Speaking on the most watched TV program, on the most watched TV channel of the BBC, Nell reminds people how Hezbollah had fired rockets in support of Hamas on 8th of October 2023.
Well, Israel's military carried out hundreds of attacks, saying it was hitting targets associated with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but also in the east of the country, in the Bekaa Valley, both of those areas seen as being Hezbollah strongholds. And it was the first time we really had these Gaza-style warnings being given out, telling civilians to leave and creating this mass exodus of people. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came out telling the Lebanese that they should take these warnings seriously. He talked about restoring what he called the security balance in the north of Israel. This is where tens of thousands of Israelis have been displaced by the cross-border fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah that has gone on. Hezbollah firing the first barrage of rockets back on the 8th of October in support of Hamas.
8th of October was just a day after Israelis had launched their genocidal campaign in Gaza. But she needed to remind audience today that what Israelis are doing in Lebanon, killing women, children, civilians, was in response to what Hezbollah had done way back on 8th of October. And that too, according to her, it was in support of Hamas, not in support of Palestinian people who were being butchered by Israelis then. Both Hezbollah and Houthis have talked about their support for Palestinians in Gaza in the current conflict. And yet, this woman brings in Hamas element. You know why? Because she knows that Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organization in a few Western countries such as the US and the UK, and linking Hezbollah to Hamas on a day when Israelis have massacred nearly 600 people, including 50 children, would be hugely helpful for Israel in the PR campaign. Can't believe this is the same organization I worked for 12 years. And I passionately defended and promoted this organization at international platforms such as TEDx Talks. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform on buymecoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that this platform is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.